Alfonso the Primary, I had barely escaped, chased from Astorga to Oviedo with the Muslims on his heels the entire time. Everything will change now that Hisham has died, and a new emir will take charge of the Emirate of Córdoba. The year was 796. Hisham had died, and his heir, Al-Hakam the rose to power. But it was not easy at all. Why? Because of the great division that existed in Al-Andalus in the Emirate of Córdoba. That idea that Muslim Al-Andalus was some kind of paradise on earth, where all cultures and religions lived in complete harmony, is a myth. That didn't happen anywhere at that time, not here, not in the Kingdom of Asturias, nor in Europe. If you're interested in me telling you about all these divisions in the Emirate, let me know in the comments and I'll cover it in the future. Now, to summarize, I'll say that there are several social divisions. The first one is based on belonging to the Muslim minority: Arabs, Berbers, Yemenis, Syrians, and so on. The second is based on religion, whether they are pure Muslims, whether they are converted Christians, or whether they are Christians who keep their faith, based on religion, or the minority. They had different rights, privileges, taxes, and obligations. The third division is based on autonomy. Well, there were territories that negotiated their surrender with the Umayyad Caliphate in exchange for having more or less independence under the new rulers. When? During the Muslim invasion, which you can learn about in the video up here. As a result, rebellions, and more rebellions. In addition to the need to find a loyal army they could trust. Anyway, if you're interested, and I think you are because it's quite relevant, just let me know and I'll talk about the topic. The fact is that we have Alfonso the Al-Hakam in his kingdom, watching everything that was happening in the Emirate of Córdoba with real astonishment. He was a very intelligent man and was willing to take advantage of every weakness of his neighbors to strengthen his own domains. This year there was no invasion campaign, so Alfonso took this moment of rest to reinforce his domains, strengthen Oviedo, and train his men. His army began a tough training and their numbers increased. He was preparing to avoid the humiliation of Oviedo being sacked by the Moors again. The following year, in 797, Alfonso II sent an embassy to Charlemagne. It is not known what they talked about, but the envoys gave war trophies taken from the Muslims to the Carolingian monarch as a sign of good faith. Meanwhile, Alfonso kept preparing his men. His spies had informed him of how bad things were in the Emirate, and Alfonso already had something in mind. A name, a city, a target. Lisbon, did you hear that right? Lisbon? Look at the map for a moment so you can understand the magnitude of the project. Here is Oviedo, the capital of the Kingdom of Asturias, and here is Lisbon. Most of the route is controlled by Muslim troops. 600 kilometers in a straight line, 800 kilometers following the roads, about 8 days of marching. Would it go well? In the year 798, Alfonso gathered his entire army, the nobles of the kingdom, and they prepared for the greatest campaign that had ever been carried out in the Kingdom of Asturias. The raids of Alfonso I and Froila will pale in comparison to this feat. By the way, you can learn about the campaigns of Alfonso I in the video I show you at the top of the screen. And why not? I would appreciate it if you subscribed if you're enjoying the video, and consider joining the Patreon or the channel's members community to support the project financially, and to get early access to content and exclusive content like the Julio Cesar Continuo series. Alfonso I set out heading south towards Astorga, where the Duero Desert was located. Once there, he headed west along the road that connected the city with Braga in the north of present-day Portugal. From there, following ancient Roman roads, they began to descend parallel to the Atlantic Ocean. There were still almost 400 kilometers left to go, and now they were completely exposed to the Muslim forces. And why did he decide to undertake this endeavor? Most likely because the level of training of his men was very high, and his army was large enough to be able to defend themselves reliably against an attacking force, so that he would feel confident enough to reach Lisbon without dying in the attempt. Another question: did the Christians destroy the villages they passed through? It's not out of the question, but it could be that they didn't. And not because they were pure men, of great ethics, who respected those who were different, but because their main advantage was surprise, and they couldn't afford a delay. They were looting villages and killing Muslims. The great prize was Lisbon, and indeed they arrived in front of Lisbon and the Saracens couldn't believe it. In front of them was a Christian army, an army that was supposed to be hiding, defending the mountains that were there. 600 kilometers to the north, barely surviving and licking their wounds from so many Muslim raids. Well, there they were. The Asturians stormed the city and swept away the defenders like a hurricane. It was time to avenge the suffering that the Umayyads had caused Oviedo. And the Christians devoted themselves to destroying the city, killing Muslims, looting and devastating. Of course, all very quickly. There was no time to lose. Once they were satisfied, they gathered all the loot, and that same day they headed north. Again, he brought up the same thing as before. They might have raided towns and villages along the way, but I find it unlikely, since their chances of survival depended on their speed. In this way, they arrived in Oviedo as champions, true heroes who had avenged the fallen. He had already won over his people. Was it time to improve his diplomatic relations with Christendom? In the autumn of that year, he sent a new embassy to Charlemagne with proof that he had sacked Lisbon. Among other things, they gave him Muslim prisoners captured during the assault. I won't get tired of repeating it. Are you aware of what just happened? Because Carlo Bagno understood it instantly. Those Christians from the north of the peninsula were no longer just a group of rebels. Now they were a strong kingdom, capable of reaching the heart of the Emirate of Córdoba. The relations between the Carolingian Empire and the Kingdom of Asturias grew very intensely. Trade between both peoples flourished through Navarra, but it wasn't just merchants. The relations led merchants, builders, clerics, and even peasants seeking fortune to travel in both directions. The Asturians learned new construction methods, ways to improve defenses, and in short, they became part of European Christendom. When Al-Hakam found out what had happened, he couldn't contain his anger. How was it possible that a handful of criminals had sacked one of the most important commercial cities of his emirate? But he couldn't do much about it because he had too many fronts open. Merida, Toledo, and the capital Córdoba rebelled against him. All three rebellions were put down quite bloodily. You can look up information about the Day of the Pit to learn more about this topic. Alfonso had sacked Lisbon, and now the north is erupting. Zaragoza rose up in arms against the Emirate, led by Bazlul ibn Marzouk, who had also managed to raise Huesca and Barbastro in rebellion. Al-Hakam attacked the walls of Zaragoza, but he was repelled time and again until in one of the assaults he was able to defeat the rebels. Marzouk escaped further north to Huesca, where he decided to defend himself with greater chances of success, but he was betrayed and executed by one of his officers. We remain in the north because Navarra will experience turbulent years. Pamplona. Here there is a fight between two families. Some were Mulades, who were the Banu Qasi, and others were the Velasco family, supported by the Carolingians, and they maintained their Christian faith. This dispute, which seems small between two simple families, will be the seed of a future kingdom. Do you know which one it will be? Leave your opinion in the comments and let's see if you get it right. Now let's go to Jaca. Charlemagne decided to create once and for all a true Hispanic march to defend his kingdom from the Muslims. He ordered Oriolo to take Jaca. No sooner said than done. With the help of the local nobility, Oriolo took the city and the surrounding territory. On the other hand, Charlemagne will continue launching attacks. The Frankish monarch took Girona and the Vic area, consolidating the counties of Urgell, Cerdanya, and Osona. In this offensive, the person of Boré, originally from Carcassonne, will become famous. He is appointed Count of Osona, and we will see that he will fight. In Barcelona and Tortosa, gentlemen, the Catalan counties have been born. Notice how everything has changed in just a handful of years. At the beginning of the year 796, the Muslims had all of Al-Andalus well under control. Thanks to the policies of Gishan, who, despite maintaining social differences, managed to keep the Emirate cohesive. They had sacked Oviedo and almost executed Alfonso the Realm himself. And now we have the kingdom of Asturias stronger than ever. Merida, Toledo, and Córdoba had rebelled. Lisbon was sacked, Zaragoza had rebelled. The northeast was now under the control of the Franks. Jaca was also Frankish, Pamplona was unstable. And the Asturians and the Franks seemed to be getting along better than ever. Going back to the Christians, Alfonso used the loot from Lisbon to turn Oviedo into a European jewel, the benchmark of the kingdom. An impregnable city where the inhabitants would feel safe and where the economy would flourish like plants in spring. However, Al-Hakam had to take revenge and cut off relations between the Carolingians and the Asturians. But we will see this in the next video.